Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
You're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing here on Off the Ball, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. For more, follow their Twitter account at HRI Racing. Every racing moment. Coming up in the next hour or so, we are going to hear from the former chief doctor of the Turf Club, Dr. Adrian McGoldrick. He has been talking to us about his experience with COVID-19 and the potential lasting effects. And in this Gigginstown Silks hat that I have beside me, we will be doing a draw in about 20 minutes' time with 20 lockdown heroes. We're going to assign them a horse each for Naas this coming Sunday. They'll have one horse each for the Ballyhane Stakes, and what will happen is the winner of that race will win a 4-night stay for the Heritage Hotel in Killinard, and they'll also have €2,000 in prize money too. Joining me to take a look at the week's racing is Johnny Ward. Johnny, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, Will. How are you keeping?
Actually, look, I'm not too bad. We're looking forward to this. You're going to be giving us a bit of a breakdown on the horses ahead of the race on Sunday for these 20 heroes in a little bit too.
Yeah, it's a great idea. This has been a long, trying time, particularly for people who've been involved in it. And Ballyhane have been obviously great supporters of racing. We've had Joe Foley on the show not so long ago as well. And, Naas is a very progressive racetrack as well. It's unfortunate. I think they would have had a lot of fun evening racing kind of this summer at a new facility with, really good view and vantage points for people who pay into Naas, and very much a track going places. But unfortunately, like basically all tracks at the moment, it's stalled because of the COVID-19 issue, and race scores still just a thing of hope at the moment. No race scores, no owners at the moment. So Naas, like other tracks, have just had to get on with it. And I think in terms of racing, I went race for the first time last week post-lockdown. I was working there, and the way it was run was exceptional. I managed to forget to get my credentials for the second day of Tramore, and was blankly told that there was absolutely no possibility of me going in. It's run really, really kind of sharply by the people there. They're taking no chances, and it's great that racing is going ahead given the problems that other sports have had.
Yeah, the situation with it, Johnny, for those who maybe aren't familiar, until September 13th, racing will continue for the fixtures that were set out already. But the owners who were hoping to get back in, you're not going to have that increased attendance. It's still going to be minimal crowds and those safety protocols until at least the 13th of September. Yeah,
I'm not going to lie. I think this is a disgrace. Owners have had to put up with an awful lot this year. They've had to pay training fees when they didn't know if their horses were coming back. Some horses were taken out of training, some were left in training. Then when owners did have their horses coming back to race, they were running races with reduced prize money for obvious reasons, because bookmaking shops weren't open, and it was very hard to win a race. They're still paying the exact same fee to their trainers, and then they're not able to go racing. And it's very difficult. I completely disagree with it, but from HRI's perspective, it has absolutely no choice in this. And government went another step this week, which I thought was an absolute scandal in what it did to people across the country who've been attending sporting events in fields around the country and have nothing really else to look forward to at the moment. But that's where we live in at the moment.
Yeah, I think in fairness, Johnny, the frustration for many different sports, not just for racing, was that they have taken so many safety protocols, particularly in the last 5 or 6 weeks, to ensure that they can get some people through the gates. And I think at the end of July, everyone had been really hopeful, particularly when the numbers were on the drop at that point, that we were going to talk about 500 people being able to go back to sporting events. And in a very quick period of time, we were talking about everything being stripped back to absolutely behind closed doors until the second week of September.
Yeah, like it was funny enough at Tramore, because as much as there were no, owners can't get in anymore, and it was only sort of connections of the horses. There was actually quite a nice atmosphere there, because trainers tend to go racing, I think, if they can now, because they're representing the owner as well. And Tramore isn't one of the biggest tracks, so there was actually a nice atmosphere there. And, when you think of the bigger tracks, like we're racing at the Curragh tomorrow, which is a 90 million development, whatever, with nobody there, to think that owners can't, or that they would cause problems. And as you said, Will, I couldn't say any more for the restrictions that they had and the way that they kind of dealt with the little crowd that was there at Tramore. I was told in no uncertain terms that there was absolutely no, there's a real nod and wink culture in getting into sport events in this country, I suppose, for years, there was absolutely none of that. I was told that, jockeys, trainers, big media personalities other than me had actually, fallen in the same problem, and there was absolutely no way you could get in. But I've had, more than one elderly owner onto me who just wants to see his horse run, and he's willing to, accept responsibility if he went racing. But unfortunately, that's not an option, and we're being run by, a very much a nanny state government at the moment, I think.
Well, look, NEFID have to make suggestions when it comes to trying to keep community transmission down, and public health is their first concern. But from a purely economical point of view, once again, this pushes back tracks not having people coming through the gate. Look, the income is there from deals that are in place for broadcasting, but it's a stark time for the industry within this country where people aren't going through the gates, John.
Absolutely, and we have the big boost of the government helping our prize money in this country. The prize money situation in Britain is beyond the point of being a joke at this stage. We've seen Ed Vaughan, a pretty high-profile trainer in recent weeks, say he's not doing it anymore. It's just not sustainable. I've seen very, very expensive horses that have won races running on the flat on their second start in Britain for around about 3,600 sterling. These are horses that could have cost $500,000. Now, just to put that into a context, if you're 500 grand horse by Frankel, he's won his maiden for 3 grand or whatever it is. If he wins his 3,600 race, after the jockey and the trainer and after deductions, you might have enough to pay 1 month's training fees. That's where they're at in Britain. In Ireland, our prize money is holding up quite well and doing as best we can. But the race courses, if you think of what Punchestown seems an awful long way ago now. Punchestown, what they lost, what Galway lost, what Champions Weekend is going to lose, and this is a current development that's obviously in its infancy. It's very, very challenging. We had, Michael Maloney on saying that the figures were catastrophic, that they were going to lose this year. I don't know how this is going to work out for racing, but as long as everyone stays at home cocooned, I'm sure everything will be fine.
Yeah, is that period we're getting ready for Listowel and Champions Weekend, and it just
Listowel as well, Will. Sorry, Listowel, I think James Connolly said Ireland without the Irish means nothing to me. Listowel and Galway without crowds is basically, it's not a non-event, but it's nothing compared to what it should be. And Listowel is traditionally a harvest festival where it's actually a great example of what's so wrong about the restrictions that even the local owner can't go and watch his horse, throughout maybe his 2 weeks holiday that he would take, and fantastic social gathering. I'm not saying they should be allowing 25,000 in or anything like that, but it's sad times. It's
a blow though for Kerry too, because the Listowel Harvest Festival always has that kind of knock-on effect. I know when you were talking about Galway a few weeks ago, like Ballybrit is a magnet to get people into the city of Galway at that time of year. Similarly for Listowel, I know plenty of people who mightn't even be the biggest racing fans, but they'd go down for a few days of the Harvest Festival, and that obviously has an economic effect that benefits Kerry too. Yeah, massively. So essentially Galway doesn't necessarily need the races. Galway is an unbelievably popular city, for tourism. And Kerry is an absolute magnet for tourism, but that's more South Kerry. You're looking at the Ring of Kerry, Killarney, and the South Coast and all that. Listowel is North Kerry. North Kerry doesn't necessarily get tourists all year round or anything like that. Listowel is a smallish enough market town. Anyone who goes to Listowel and tries to stay there will attest to the fact that there isn't that much accommodation. And many people then would stay like as far as Ballybunion or even Killarney Tralee, because Listowel is slightly a seasonal town in terms of tourism. And this festival, and obviously Writers' Week, absolutely massive to the town. It doesn't have an awful lot in terms of tourist attractions for the rest of the year round, partly because Kerry just has so much otherwise that there's only so much you can fit in. And Listowel is a lovely town, great character to it, obviously great a history with the racing and the writing and all that, and the Lartigue monorail. It's a very quirky town, but I can only assume this is a massive, massive blow to rural Ireland in terms of Listowel, and it's just very unfortunate. And I got the feeling that the people were very resilient during lockdown, but there's an awful lot of frustration now that people are just kind of getting a little bit fed up and just hoping that we get normality as soon as we can, as much as NEFID has its job to do. Yeah, well, particularly in the last 24 hours with all the political revelations too. In terms of COVID-19, our sports breakfast show here on Off the Ball is OTBAM in association with Gillette. The guys this morning were talking to Dr. Adrian McGoldrick, who explained his own experience with COVID-19 and some of the lasting effects beyond it too.
Delighted to say Dr. Adrian McGoldrick is with us. Dr. McGoldrick, good morning to you. Normally we're talking about horse racing on Friday Night Racing with you, but it's been an interesting week in terms of your own public utterances. You shared an article from the New York Times which talked about the potential complications for people who've had COVID and heart difficulties that they might suffer. And particularly this is something that has essentially had a massive impact on college football in America and on American society, and then subsequently revealed that you had some post-COVID complications yourself.
Yes, Ger. I had myself swabbed for COVID last May, as I had 3 patients in a nursing home positive with COVID. I was basically asymptomatic, some very mild symptoms, but at the time I would have put them down to actually fatigue from working in the garden, because that was the time of the very good weather. But I isolated for 14 days, went back to work. I did have a spinal operation in the interim. I popped a disc and have a spinal fixation, but I came home after 4 days, went back in and working remotely in the practice for 5 weeks and felt absolutely fine, but eventually returned to practice 6 weeks ago, lasted 4.5 days and literally could not get out of bed with profound fatigue. Spent 3 days in bed, went back to work the following week, again lasted 4.5 days, and again just this most profound fatigue, which is literally indescribable. Literally couldn't have the energy to lift my hand to pick up a phone. So my partner, Bernard Healy, rightly so, we both agreed that I should take some time out. I was still trying to cover some race meetings that I was committed to, but I found even after a race meeting, which is not very physically stressful, I just hasn't been of late, thankfully. Not too many followers, so I'd be mainly just sitting in the ambulance, walking as little as possible. But even after that, I'd end up in bed for a day or two. So having assisted again with Jennifer Pugh, Jennifer Sicknor as Senior Medical Officer, and with Bernard, I decided I definitely should go for further investigations. So I was admitted to the Beacon last Tuesday week, and all my bloods have been repeatedly normal in the surgery, repeatedly normal in the hospital, although there are some outstanding more detailed tests. But the one thing that did turn up was that on the cardiac MRI I had myocarditis. Now, the only common denominator was the positive COVID test 3 months previously, and fit in with the timescale of other post-COVID myocarditis. Potentially there may be some other causes which we haven't found, but as I say, the only common denominator was the COVID. And certainly reading other articles I've read on post-COVID myocarditis, and my cardiologist felt it was the most likely option as well, Dr. Robert Kelly at the Beacon. So the reason I decided to treat was more to put a warning out to people who would, because I think we're beginning to get a little bit lackadaisical about COVID. We were very good at the beginning in our observations of our social distancing, our wearing of masks, our hand washing. I think some of the younger people are of the notion that COVID is only a disease of older people, or at least complications are only a problem for older people. I was trying to get the message out. This disease should be avoided at all costs, because there's nobody is safe from it. As you mentioned, that article in the New York Times last Monday week mentioned about college football in America being decimated by it. It also gave the human cost of it in the effects it's having on young people very, very vividly. Not everybody possibly would have had a chance to read that article. But then in relation to that study from Germany, which looked at a cohort of 100 people who either were asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, but had made a full recovery with a mean age of 45. And 3 months later, 79% had heart problems, literally 60% with myocarditis. And so really that was my message. Look, be very, very aware of this disease. This is lethal. This is something, I'm 40 years in general practice. I've never seen anything next or near like it. It's a highly dangerous, a highly lethal virus. We must keep up our vigilance. I think the Irish people as a whole, as I said before, with very good public health advice and government following that advice, we've done a super job, but we must just keep this vigilance up for the foreseeable future.
You made the point as well, subsequent to tweeting out the article and then tweeting out your own story, seeing the response to my tweet about myocarditis post-COVID, I would plead with the National Treatment Purchase Fund to provide cardiac MRI to all public patients with any COVID symptoms. Is this... Yes, go on, sorry.
The reason I said that is that I'm one of the lucky people to have private insurance. I did an echocardiograph, which was an echocardiograph which is normal, would normally be diagnostic of heart disease. The only test with me which showed up that I had myocarditis was a cardiac MRI. Now, there's a limited availability of those in hospitals in Ireland, mainly in the private hospitals. To my knowledge, it's not available in the National Purchase Treatment Fund as of now. But my fear is that people who may not have private insurance will have similar symptoms to me, will possibly have a normal echo like me and put down as being probably just chronic fatigue syndrome, or as I said, in lesser cases as possibly being psychological, which certainly it is not. And I would not like anybody to have a ongoing chronic fatigue due to myocarditis and not have an appropriate diagnosis. And I know my colleagues who are cardiologists would certainly like to be able to make that definitive diagnosis as well and provide the appropriate advice.
So would this be when they get COVID first, or is it tends to be 3 months later is the sweet spot where you use that?
Yeah, there are obviously in the more severe cases of COVID, it can occur earlier on, but certainly the data coming out now is that it can be one of the delayed side effects. I mean, COVID is a multifactorial disease. I mean, there's no organ in the body spared. It can affect your brain. It can naturally, we all know that it's a disease of the lungs, but now the long-term data, if you call long-term 6 months, it's showing that perhaps there's actually there are more problems with the heart than anything else. It naturally causes clots in the legs, causes microclots in the skin, affects the adrenals. Affects the skin. So there's literally no organ saved. So it's a very unique virus. As I said, I've been 40 years in practice. I've never seen anything like it. So I think it's just we need to get that warning out to people. This is a really serious virus. Don't ease up on what you're doing. I agree that there's naturally a financial cost to the state and to businesses, but there's a morbidity as well, and we do not want a large cohort of our population with long-term problems into the future, both for them personally and for the state as a provider of medical care. So it's trying to get that balance between good health, good public health, and keeping the state finances rolling over. It's a difficult balance to do, but I think as a country we've done a pretty good job. We are still on our first wave. We're bouncing on the bottom of it. Many countries in Europe are back in their second waves. Hong Kong's in its third wave. So I think as a people, we've done an amazing job. And my just reason was to just try and encourage people, please continue to observe all the norms we've been asked to do.
I've one last question before I just bring in Shane on this. We don't really know about the long-term impact of the kids who get this just yet. So a lot of parents are concerned about sending their kids back into the school environment. Earlier in this, they were super spreaders, and then it was like, actually, it has no impact on them, so it'll be grand. But, if we're only beginning to get to grips with the fact that 3 months later, adults are suffering fairly significant heart issues, this might be an issue for kids as well.
Again, it's too early. I mean, the initial data would show that certainly under 10, they're highly unlikely to have any symptoms. Although, I mean, we know that earlier this week we had 4 children in Crumlin with it. But under 10, there doesn't appear to be a significant. There is a morbidity, very small morbidity with it. Over 10, there's a higher risk. There definitely are carriers, but they do seem to be more resilient, certainly. So I think, again, this is part of this balance we're trying to achieve. I personally would support the return of children to school. I've got 2 grandchildren here in Ireland who are going back to school the week after next. I would fully support that with the appropriate public health guidelines. So I think it's all part of this balance of health and what's good for the people and for the state. So I would personally support the reopening of schools with the appropriate criteria in place.
Adrian, for people who may not have heard of myocarditis, and I know, I've seen on Twitter you're talking about how you would have worked 16-hour days, and there are days now where you can barely get out of bed. But how would you describe the condition of myocarditis for people who maybe haven't heard of it, and especially for the benefit of people who are maybe not wearing masks or still going out to parties or house parties? What's the condition like on a bad day for you?
Well, what myocarditis is actually an inflammation of the heart muscle. So the heart muscle is not basically up to the job. I mean, as I would work 16, 18-hour days and literally wouldn't take a feather out of me. when I was at my worst a month ago, I physically could not get out of the bed. I would literally prefer to have curled up and died. I felt so miserable. I mean, I could not believe how fatigued I could be. I literally could not lift myself up in the pillow. I just would not wish it on anybody. The fatigue is just so profound. As I said, I'm up early this morning for this reason. Up until today, I would not be getting out of bed until 12 o'clock because I've been advised to try and get 8 to 10 hours to 12 hours sleep where possible, at least rest. And the only treatment for this is resting the heart in the hope that the muscle will settle itself. So there's no medical management for it, and that is the problem. And the other risk, again, is if you don't follow that advice and do overexert yourself, there is a possibility of getting an arrhythmia or an irregular heart rate, which could cause your heart to stop. So this is not something to be sniffed at. It's something you do need to follow very good medical advice and do what you're told.
Adrian, one of the things that really struck me from that New York Times piece that we referenced, that you tweeted out, was one of the stats that since February, nearly 25,000 more Americans have died of heart disease compared with the same period last year. And I know the American Heart Association have their Don't Die of Doubt campaign. Surely some of those deaths are down to this myocarditis, but others are down to the fact that people aren't going to the hospital anymore because they don't feel safe doing so. So what would you say to those people who maybe are putting off their hospital appointments?
No. It was across all causes of heart disease. We definitely, I know in my own practice from speaking with Bernard, who's my partner, speaking with other colleagues, people are putting off going for checkups, be it for heart disease, obviously, which is potentially lethal, for diabetes, for all the other diseases. We know that the diagnosis of cancer has fallen by over 50% during this COVID, and that's simply because people are putting it off. I would plead with people, with anybody out there who's feeling unwell. General practice are actually very safe places to go because we're working under very strict hygiene criteria. They're absolutely safe places to go, and I would plead with people, do contact your GP if you have symptoms, and please follow up on your chronic disease, be it heart disease, diabetes, etc.
Adrian, I'm sure you would have had a couple of months there, possibly with maybe very few or little to none positive diagnoses for COVID-19. And I'd seen you mention that you'd had a few even in the last week or two. So are you concerned people aren't taking public health advice seriously enough? I know you're based in Newbridge as well, so Kildare still on lockdown. Yeah. So what's the general vibe down there? Are people taking it seriously?
The vast majority are. I haven't been out very much, but I know chatting with Anne, my wife, while out shopping, again, there's still a minority who are not wearing masks. We're still seeing people not social distancing. Yeah, we have definitely had a spike in Kildare. Vast majority, as you know, within meat processing plants. But I've had 3 patients in my own practice positive last weekend. No obvious source for it. So we are seeing a spike. Again, a lot of cases, unfortunately, 9 out of 10 people are asymptomatic or have very mild symptoms. And sometimes we cannot pick up where it's coming from. But all I can say is to those who are not following the guidelines of wearing their masks, washing their hands, avoiding social distancing, and particularly the young people who are going to parties, think twice, because it's not just about your family, your relatives. It's about you, because we do know this has a morbidity for young people, and I think young people need to look in the mirror and think about themselves for a start, not just about this is a disease which does not affect me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very powerful way to wrap this up. Dr. McGoldrick, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks a million for making the time for us, and we wish you the very best in your recovery.
Thank you very much, indeed. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's Dr. Adrian McGoldrick there, who obviously made his reputation in the public sphere as a doctor with the Turf Club over 30, 40 years, but obviously now involved in general practice and coming forward to tell us exactly some of the stuff that we might need to hear, and all of us, all generations, that this is the type of thing that you really, really do not want to get. 087 918 180 is the number here if you want to get in touch.
Dr. McGoldrick there in conversation with the lads on OTBAM. OTBAM will be back on Monday morning from 7:30, and the show is brought to you by Gillette. Here on Friday Night Racing, Johnny Ward is still with us. Johnny, we've had the Ebor Festival at York across the week, and a lot of the horses that were running well all summer have won this week in terms of the big races. This afternoon we had the Nunthorpe, and Batash has won again, second time winner of this race, has gone on now to 13 career wins, but was made to work all the way at York this afternoon.
Yeah, I have to say I didn't see the race. I was I just literally just missed it. It was on 12 minutes ago. He's an unbelievable horse, Patash. I thought I couldn't really see him being beaten today. He was obviously taking on an interesting horse in Art Power, who had, you know, progressed from 3-year-old ranks, but 222 to 1 shots, Kuamoro and Moskill won by a length. So I'd have to watch back the race, to be honest. But as you say, the horses that have been in good nick this year, the likes of Love, you know, holding up their form. Love was absolutely brilliant in winning the Yorkshire Oaks, and Batash is just incredible now. It's great to see these horses stay in training, and Love is probably going to go to the Arc as I think as a favourite. 3-year-old filly from Ireland favourite for the Arc is something very unusual, and I think she's probably got a massive chance. But apologies that I hadn't watched the Batash race. It's been a busy day.
Yeah, well, look, Love at this point has been slashed by the bookies for the Arc on the back of that victory this week. I mean, she's had a pretty remarkable summer so far, John.
Unbelievable, yeah. Obviously started off in the Guineas, and she was very good in the Guineas, and she was a good 2-year-old, but just the way she's progressed for distance, she's a full sister to Peachtree and absolutely relishes it. And when she won the Oaks at Epsom, she came off a strong pace. The following day in the Derby, those who came off a strong pace couldn't get near the winner. I think Aidan O'Brien says she's the best filly he's trained, which is something. Like he's obviously probably more known for, you know, the course that he's trained. But when you think of the likes of Alexandra, Peep and Fawn and horses like that, Magical, who obviously ran at York as well, it ran very well behind Gate. But she's just doing everything with ridiculous ease. And, you know, as much as when she takes on colts and when she takes on older horses and all of that and puts the whole lot together, it'll test her. But honestly, you know, I think she could run over 1.6 miles. She could win a very good race over 1 mile. And she's just so straightforward. She's absolutely special. And what's also interesting is that all these Galileo fillies, Coolmore, are looking for a stallion to sort of be the go-to guy for these Galileo bred mares, because obviously Galileo can't service Galileo mares, so they procured Wootton Bassett there last week, and he's the latest one. Warfront has been a bit of a mixed success, but it'll be interesting to see where they send her when she goes to the paddocks. But I don't think we'll be able to go to Paris to watch her, but if we can, it'll be a great spectacle, because it's kind of a cool meeting to go to when there's a strong Irish fancy, and she just has so much of a swagger.
Yeah, I've only ever been to Longchamp once, but it is a very special race course. When it comes to Gate, you mentioned already, again, a pretty comfortable win, again on a run of Group 1 victories at this stage too.
Yeah, you know, and it was probably a very good tactical ride, but he's beaten Kamako and he's beaten Magical. Magical, I thought, emerged with a massive credit because she was the first horse beaten, but kept on, and sort of eventually mastered everything else. But it just goes to show, like, Enable obviously beaten on her seasonal return behind him in the Eclipse, but he's absolutely exceptional. He's really, really straightforward. Loves going from the front, and just, you know, he's been a pleasure to watch. I think he's probably, Batash and Love would be the 3 horses who really lit up this kind of strange 2020 summer campaign. And you know, you mentioned York, you mentioned Listowel and towns like that. York is probably a ghost town compared to what it would be. I was there to watch Frankel when he beat St. Nicholas Abbey and others as a 4-year-old at York, and it's a cracking town, obviously a really historic town, and just like the rest of these towns in the islands at the moment, just kind of trying to get by.
You're listening to Friday Night Racing with HRI Ireland. We're going to do our draw for our lockdown heroes when we come back after this very short break.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Here, welcome back to Friday Night Racing. Will O'Callaghan joined by Johnny Ward. Now, this coming Sunday, we'll see Naas Racecourse host the Irish EBF Ballyhane Stakes. It's a race with a special twist because in recent weeks, Naas have put the call out for lockdown heroes to be assigned a horse, And the winner of the race will walk away with a 4-night luxury staycation at the Heritage in Kilnard in County Laois for 2 adults and 2 children. They'll also have the use of a Colin Quinn BMW for a week and €2,000 in spending money. Naas Racecourse were inundated with fantastic nominations and had to whittle them down to 20 lockdown heroes for the show this evening. Johnny and I are going to have the pleasure of allocating the horses to some very special people. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out the lockdown heroes from this helmet which is beside me with the Jigginstown silks on it, and Johnny's got the 20 horses ready at his base at home. He's going to draw them out and we're going to assign a horse, and Johnny's going to go through the chances that that horse will have on Sunday afternoon. So let's have a look and see who is going to be lockdown hero number 1 out of the hat. And it is Bernard Murphy, who's a healthcare volunteer, coordination at Tallaght Stadium's COVID-19 testing centre. Bernard took on the role of bringing together a team of volunteers to work at the stadium as a frontline COVID testing centre for the HSE. Since March, he has worked more than 50 hours some weeks, always being reassuring and supportive to those who arrive for testing, treating everyone with dignity and respect. And Johnny, you're going to give me a horse for Bernard.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Bernard. I'm off to Tallaght Stadium actually later, and very conscious of the fact that it did turn into kind of a centre to deal with things like that. 50 hours a week is incredible stuff. Hopefully I can draw you out something that's going to be to your favour here. We've 20 numbers in this little espresso cup of mine. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the cup to see what we come up with here. And would you believe it? This is like Dougal and Ted. It's number 1. I was looking at it upside down. So it's number 1. And number 1 in the race is Chief Little Hawk, who's a horse by Air Force Blue, one of the first Air Force Blue horse that Aidan O'Brien has trained. Extremely consistent all year. Might be a little bit of a concern if the ground is on the soft side, which he wouldn't have handled yet or wouldn't have run on yet. But it's been a strange enough kind of few days. I think it's drying out a bit today. He's rated 96. Georgia Vasari, who's the same connections, and Hyde Park Barracks, also Air Force Blue, same yard, would have similar ratings. Definitely not without a chance, hopefully. And so it's the top weight. Number 1, would you believe it? Chief Little Hawk will be ridden by Seamus Heffernan, who, it should be mentioned, won the big race at Killarney today, as good a ride as you'll ever see. So won't be lacking on that score anyway, Bernard.
Right, best of luck to Bernard. Second, I've taken one from the top and one from the bottom. It is going to be Sinead Keogh, who's GAA Community COVID Liaison in Naas. During lockdown, Sinead brought together a large number of volunteers from the GAA club in Naas to help the local community, whether it was just getting an odd job done, collecting, shopping or medicine for people, particularly the elderly, while they were cocooning. So who's Sinead going to get there, John?
So this time we've number 14. Now, if I can get it up here, number 14 is Amazed by Grace, who is trained by Johnny Murta, local to Naas. Will be ridden by Shane Kelly, a jockey who's really had a renaissance in his career. This horse won at a big price at Dundalk last time. That was last weekend, actually. Would probably need to step up. But Johnny Murta, I think his strike rate is 20% this season, so that's massively encouraging, and it's actually an unbelievable campaign considering how competitive Ireland is, which I mentioned earlier. First run for her at Naas and wouldn't be without a chance.
Okay, 1 and 5, not decent. That's decent enough odds going into the race. Our next lockdown hero is Sharon O'Carroll, who is a community volunteer in County Kildare. Sharon organised the cooking and delivery of 140 free hot meals a week to elderly and vulnerable people in the Kildare area. Sharon was involved in organising a courier service delivering medical prescriptions too from local chemists to elderly people who were in lockdown. At Easter, Sharon also organised hampers for those who had to cocoon. So Sharon O'Carroll's horse is going to be, Johnny?
Sharon's horse is this is a difficult one. I think that's number 6.
This is why you need to put a line underneath it to make sure it's 6 rather than 9, John.
Yeah, that's 6. So number 6 is, I don't do these draws very often. Number 6 is Vaffertino, trained by Joseph O'Brien, a horse who ran well at Leopardstown last time in a good race. Definitely not without a chance.
Okay, you can tell we don't do raffles all that often, but here we go. Next lockdown hero is Theresa Mcginn, who's a physio in County Kilkenny. Theresa worked the entire way through lockdown as a physio at her clinic. She sent her other staff home and furloughed then, as they all had vulnerable family members. She didn't want to risk any of their family's health for her business. Instead, she took on the workload herself of 4 physios, even though she's suffering from arthritis in herself, and in order to help her parents who were in pain but too vulnerable to risk going into hospital in the middle of the pandemic. So, what's the horse going to be for Theresa, John?
Yeah, you see why I'm a little bit confused here, because number 9 has come out. So there we are. So number 9.
This is proof that this is all kosher
here. Devious Company, well named. This is a massive chance. You're going to be very happy with this. Tom Dascombe rated 107. Big chance, possibly favourite.
Okay. Emma Redmond is a nurse at St Vincent's Hospital in Athy. She is the ward manager at the hospital, has gone above and beyond helping her patients during COVID who couldn't have visitors at the hospital. She dressed up as the Easter Bunny, giving out eggs to her patients at Easter, then got photos of the patients with their eggs, laminated them and sent them out to their families, while also studying for a degree currently as well. So that's Emma Redmond. What's Emma going to get there, Johnny?
Emma got number 15, Amber Kite, ridden by Colin Keane for Ger Lyons, and I've no doubt Ger will dress up as the Easter Bunny if this wins. Would have a little bit to find on ratings.
Well, especially if he gets a chance maybe to go along to the Heritage. Okay, so next lockdown hero is going to be Hazel Gleeson, who's a HSE project manager at the Croke Park Testing Centre. Hazel has managed the testing facility at Croke Park and was working 12-hour days and weekends during the height of the pandemic to help keep it open and up and running. She also manages all of this while being a single mother to a teenager and did all the running around for her parents who were cocooning because they were over the age of 70.
Class. So the single kid could be called Street Kid, and that is the number 5. So Street Kid number 5, trained by Jessica Harrington, wouldn't be without a chance as well. Won a Cork last time.
Okay, we've got a 20-horse race coming up, so getting in here is a chance once you've got any kind of horse. GA community volunteer in Selbridge is Lorraine Kavanagh, who's our next lockdown hero. Lorraine took on the job of coordinating the GA volunteers who delivered groceries and ran errands for people who were cocooning in the Selbridge area. It was an essential service, particularly in the months of March, April and May in the first lockdown when people were under pressure. Who's the horse for Lorraine, Johnny?
Yeah, Lorraine gets a stablemate of Jessica Harrington's Fly Girl, number 16, ridden by Conor Hoban. Leopardstown maiden winner, another with a chance.
Okay, when I see John Doyle from Kildare, I start to wonder, is it the football legend? But John Doyle is a postman. During lockdown, he went above and beyond. His route is large and extra busy. He still checked in on all of his elderly customers who were cocooning to see if they needed anything, and he got them whatever they needed and dropped supplies to them while they were in lockdown.
Top man. I thought he might get a Kildare trainer, but not as it turns out. Number 7, Sloane Peterson, ridden by Andrew Slattery for Fozzie Stack, Cork maiden winner, 25-1 in the betting.
Okay. Next up is John Fitzsimons, who's a volunteer with the Order of Malta in Mullingar in Westmeath. Since April of this year, John has been assisting his community on medical transfers 5 to 7 days per week. He also assists delivering medications to those who are isolating or couldn't leave during the lockdown. John has given up every day for the last 5 months and is continuing to do so to make sure that medical supplies get to people in the area.
It's very heartwarming stuff to be doing that day in, day out. And if ever there was an inspiring man, it's Kevin Prendergast, who is one of the legendary trainers in Ireland. He trains Munasa, very impressive winner in a good race at Cork Sunday. Massive player here, number 13.
Okay, next up is Justin Kelly, who is an Order of Malta volunteer in Dublin. Justin put his life on hold to work on the Irish front line. He returned from Australia at the start of March, volunteering with the Ambulance Corps with the Order of Malta, providing support and care to those in the community and also at Dublin hospitals, where he was on a designated COVID ward. Justin spent 4 months away from his family and friends and his ambulance colleagues to work on the front line for those who are in need. Justin's horse then.
He got Charmed, number 8, Justin. This horse 25-1, but definitely don't give up on him. He ran a really nice race at Naas last time. He looks like he's improving with experience. So number 8, Charmed for Justin.
Okay. Stacey Luby is a Garda in Navan in County Meath. Works at Navan Garda Station, has been doing so throughout lockdown, where she looked after vulnerable people in the community, shopping, delivering meals and collecting prescriptions. She also brought those who were vulnerable to their doctor appointments. At Easter, she got the children to make Easter cards for people who were living alone and were cocooning.
Number 12. So number 12 is Inhaler, ridden by Gary Halpin for Carol Burke, winner at Hamilton last time. Cheek pieces on for the first time, and if they're coming over here, must have some sort of a chance from Britain.
OK, we're going west for the next one. Paula O'Connor supplied essential PPE for the frontline staff there. She made masks and scrubs for frontline workers when there was a shortage, even though she was working her normal full-time job. Spent many late nights and weekends cutting and sewing scrubs and masks voluntarily for those working in the hospital in Sligo.
Get Moonista, which is trained by Jack Davison and has been very consistent without winning. Would have a little bit to find. Number 17.
OK, we're down to the last few now. Monica O'Brien is a clinical nurse manager at the hospital in Naas. She was due to retire in June, but given that the hospital was under pressure due to COVID, she postponed her retirement so she could continue to help out her colleagues. Even went back working night shifts when needed on the wards, which was not her originally role, but she went above and beyond to try and help. So who's Monica going to get, John?
Monica gets number 11, Eastern Voice, trained by Jim Bulger, and this horse is rated 94, horse by Vocalised, would come into the reckoning on the best of its form.
OK, John Ryan is a postman in Naas. He worked every day of the initial lockdown so some of his colleagues could get extra time off to be with their families. He also gave extra time to his elderly customers who had no visitors. He brought them key items such as milk, bread and a newspaper each day and delivered it the next morning or the evening after his shift. So John Ryan from Naas, who's he getting, Johnny?
He gets number 20, the bottom weight, which is Measure of Magic, who's probably going to be second favourite. So John could have a bit of good news to deliver to the people around his local town. Well,
delivering is what he does. Patricia McGuinness is a nurse in Belfast Hospital, working in the Ulster Hospital in Belfast when the coronavirus hit. She volunteered to go and work in the COVID ICU. She also helped all her elderly neighbours with their shopping, went to the post office for them, and even baked treats like brownies and lemon drizzle cake to try and cheer them up during lockdown.
Wouldn't be a good Belfast woman without an ability to bake a good cake. Number 10 is Rebel at Dawn, trained by Carl Burke, ridden by Oisin Orr, and obviously coming over from Britain would have some sort of a chance as well. So that's Rebel at Dawn, number 10.
OK, next up is Niamh Ahern, who's a doctor at the hospital in Tallaght. Niamh was one of those who came home from abroad. She flew home from Perth at the start of the pandemic in March to help out as a doctor on the front line at the COVID wards in Tallaght Hospital.
And number 3 is Hyde Park Barracks, trained by Aidan O'Brien and Pádraig Beggy, 40-1, but that hasn't stopped Pádraig having big price winners before.
OK, we've just a few left now. We've got Aoife Green, who works in the emergency department at the Mater Hospital as a liaison nurse, has been doing so and has been running the Mater Hospital emergency department with great care over the last few months, particularly during the surge of COVID-19. She ran a team of nurses and doctors drafted in from different sectors and brought them together to help out in the emergency department during the pandemic.
Number 19, which is Anna Strata, another Jessica Harrington runner, is a maiden, but 2 good runs, particularly at Goran last time, and would have a squeak.
OK, Catherine and John Merrick, who I assume will go to the Heritage together if they win. They're food bank volunteers in Naas in County Kildare. Catherine and her husband kept the food bank going on the main street in Naas during the pandemic. They work year round to keep food on the table for people who are in need.
Number 18 for the duo, and that is Alagar. Big price for Jim Bulger, another filly by Vocalised. Number 18, Alagar.
OK, last couple here now. Katrina Toomey, who's the CEO of Cork Penny Dinners. Katrina has kept the homeless and marginalised in Cork fed with 3 meals a day and gave them food, clothes, parcels and PPE during COVID-19. She provides this service week round and around the clock, but during COVID and the lockdown went beyond the call of duty and worked tirelessly around the clock, particularly with those who are sleeping rough at night.
Number 4, and that is State of Rest, another Joseph O'Brien runner, rated 100, definite chance.
OK, well now our helmet has come to an end, and the last name that comes out is Caoimhe O'Mahony, who's a nurse at Naas Hospital. Caoimhe is a nurse in the General Hospital in Naas. She contracted COVID while treating patients, and once she beat it, she went straight back to work caring for others, even though it meant that she couldn't visit her newborn nephew for 4 months.
Well, that doesn't get much more inspiring than that, to be fair. Although so many of these are so worthy of winning this. And I mentioned at the top, Air Force Blue. Well, this is another Air Force Blue, Giorgio Vasari, trained by Aidan O'Brien. And I think Aidan will definitely be given plenty of congratulations to Caoimhe if this comes in, because Aidan is a man who's behaved exemplary as well in terms of the lockdown and has always stressed the importance of health.
Look, best of luck to the 20 lockdown heroes at Naas on Sunday, and whoever wins is going to have a fantastic 4-day staycation at the Heritage in Killinard with that car for the week from Colin Quinn BMW and €2,000 prize money too. We're going to be picking your bed of the week for the tote in a few minutes, Johnny, but in terms of what's happening this weekend, you already mentioned at the top, you've got the Curragh coming up, you've got Naas on Sunday, and I'm sure Irish Eyes will be on at the end of the Ebor Festival at York this weekend too.
Yeah, the Ebor is going to be the sort of the feature race on the last day of York, and Joseph O'Brien has an interesting runner over in the shape of Pondus. I think Ireland has won 4 of the last 10 renewals of this. Ger Lyons won it last year. William Mullins has won it in recent years, as has Tony Martin. And Pondus is interesting. It's curious because as much as a lot of us are bemoaning the fact that you can't go racing and all that, those of us who have been cocooned, we've probably forgotten what it was like when there was no racing for 3 months. The racing has been day in, day out, has been of a really high quality, and just like for elderly people to have this, particularly who aren't really able to go out, it's absolutely massive. And let's be honest, most people are watching racing and they're not going racing any day of the week. They're watching on their phone, they're watching on their TV, and they've kind of compressed the season such that we've just got like 2 meetings very regularly on run-of-the-mill days, and it's been fantastic stuff. As I said, Naas obviously on Sunday, and the Curragh tomorrow, a cracking card at the Curragh as well, Will.
Okay, well, look, where we are with the toad at the moment, a 10th place finish for Desi Deschamps at Tramore last Sunday has left our Toad Irish Injured Jockeys Fund just under €2,000, 1,990. We're looking to push the pot back over €2,000. We've got a €100 bet with the toad. And what way is it going to go, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm going to go in the Futurity Stakes, the feature at the Curragh tomorrow, and I'm going to go with Southern Cape for Donnacha O'Brien and Gavin Ryan. This horse is an 8-1 chance. At Leopardstown last time, he couldn't really steer him. He was hanging right, but he's out of Tiggy-Wiggy, really well-bred horse, and I think he'll run much better than that at the Curragh. It's an open enough race, but I think he can reverse the form with a couple of horses ahead of him. That's Southern Cape in the 4:45. He's 8-1. I think he's a great each way bet of that.
Okay, good chance to go back over €2,000 there. It is with thanks to Tote.ie, the new home of Irish tote betting. This weekend is the final call for the Tote.com customers to withdraw any remaining balances on their accounts. And for more, see the Tote.com. Johnny Ward, thanks a million for joining us on Friday Night Racing.
Thanks, Will. Have a good weekend.
You too. If you missed this, if you're just joining us now late, you can re-watch the entire Friday Night Racing from today back on our social media channels. Check out Off the Ball on YouTube or otbsports.com. And you can also listen back to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts or on the new OTB Sports app. Speak to you
Friday
soon.
Night Racing. Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.